The Bogeymen. Too good to be true. Out of my way, dweeb! He tried to look as casual as possible as he braced for a run-in with Bill Mason's shoulder, as Bill and his fellow louts came sauntering down the hall from behind him. As usual, Mason's heavy nudge was a stark reminder of their difference in size. He ventured a glance at their receding backs and noticed Mason's girlfriend Josie hanging on his arm. She turned to look over Mason's shoulder at him, her expression angry. Unfortunately, Mason noticed too. Turning around, he said, "Hey, dork! What you looking at, huh?" Great. Mason and Co. were going to try to rough him up. Mason started swaggering towards him, making the sort of pseudo-Hispanic gestures all louts like him copied from movies and television. Mason had pushed Josie behind him, like the conquering tough guy he imagined himself to be, and his two buddies, Eric and Mojo, flanked him for maximum effect. "Hey, jerk-off, I'm talking to you." "The name's Gerald," he said with a sappy smile that he knew would get Mason really riled. At the same time, he reached into his locker. Turning to each of his buddies in turn, perhaps to emphasize that it was going to be a 3-on-1, Mason said, "Nah, his real name's Jerkoff? Right? Right?" They agreed, of course. This was intended to further intimidate him. Mason resumed his slow swagger once more. As he drew closer, his buddies began to draw forward, wanting a piece of the action. When they were about 4 feet away, Gerald pulled something out of his locker. He had been waiting for this moment. It was a machete. Razor sharp, 2 feet long. Still smiling his sappy smile, he said, "I want a piece of you, Mason the Masturbator." To his amazement, Mason and Co., though they had stopped dead in their tracks, were still looking for the advantage. "What'd you call me?" Gerald went cold inside. To all outward appearances, Mason had an unbelievable amount of guts. But Gerald knew otherwise. The truth was that Mason had absolutely no sense, and that made him extremely dangerous. He would ignore the threat of the machete. The only way Gerald would be able to stop him would be to use it, and they both knew that he wouldn't. Couldn't. "What the hell is going on here?" Through a haze of fear and relief, Gerald watched as Mr. Cowper, the vice principal and lethal enforcer of the school, strode through the knot of curious onlookers and walked right up to him. Gerald didn't take his eyes from Mason as Mr. Cowper said, in what he fancied must be his best impression of a threatening voice, "Give that thing to me. I want to see you in my office. Right now." Sitting in Cowper's office, Gerald's thoughts wandered as the vice principal began his lecture. Cowper was living in La La Land. He seemed to have little or no grasp of what a student had to do to survive in this school. Mason and his buddies were going to kick the living crap out of him, and no amount of whining to the school or his parents or his friends would change that. Not listening to a word the man said, Gerald waited until the ordeal was over and left. As he made his way towards the front exit, he tried to mentally prepare himself for another encounter with Mason. But Mason wasn't waiting for him at the front entrance. His girlfriend Josie was. Josie, by all accounts, was the best-looking girl in the school. A petite blonde, her looks and overall general appearance were enough to make a guy's knees turn to rubber, his innards to jello, and his brain to slip into neutral. But as Gerald walked towards her, there was something else about her appearance which grabbed his attention. There was a pallor about her that gave one the impression that her heart was hoarding blood. She was scared. "Gerald? I've got to talk to you." He stopped and tried to gather his thoughts. Yeah, okay, but outside. They're closing up." "Have you got your car here?" she asked hopefully. "I want to get away from here." Mystified, he nodded. They began walking to the parking lot. "Look, Gerald, I'm really glad you stood up to Billy. But there's something I've got to tell you." To his embarrassment, she started to cry. He stopped, but she grabbed his arm and propelled him forward. "Please, can we just get away from here?" They reached his car and got in. "Where?" "I don't care, just let's go." He started up, drove aimlessly for a while, and at her direction turned onto a quiet road, which led towards the lake. After several minutes, she seemed to gather her composure once more. She began to speak. "Billy's going to kill you. Don't give me that look. I mean it. You don't know him like I do. You haven't seen the kind of things he's capable of. I need you to help me." "Billy's been... he's been forcing me?" She stopped and began crying again. Shaking her head angrily, she got herself under control once more. "He hurts me. A couple of times he almost strangled me when I wouldn't do what he wanted." Gerald listened, shocked, becoming angrier by the minute. "Gerald, you remember that girl he used to go out with? Penny? What's her name?" "It was Patty Atchison. We used to call her Little Patty Porkchop." "You remember what happened to her?" He shrugged. "I heard she overdosed." Somehow knowing what was coming, he heard her say words which made him go cold inside. "Billy killed her. He told me. He killed her boyfriend too, so that he could have her. She warned me about him, and now... I'm..." She started crying once more. "The police," he said quietly. "They're no better than talking to Mr. Cowper or my parents. You know what I mean? They've all got their head up their ass. He'll kill both of us before they'll wake up and do something about it." She was right. There was nothing he could say about her logic because his own experience had led him to the same conclusion. "So," he said, "what are you going to do?" They had come to the end of the paved road. There were narrow dirt roads leading into the bush, several of which wandered down to the lake. Others led to campgrounds, dead ends, and clearings in the forest where he and his friends had in the past gone to make a bonfire and party. "Let's turn here," she said. He did so. It was a narrow road, almost a trail, which led deep into the forest. It meandered for some time before coming to a dead end in a clearing. He came to a stop and killed the engine. She turned to him and gave him a gouging look. "Gerald, we have to kill him. We have to. There isn't any choice. He's made up his mind to kill you. He's going to get you alone, just you and him, so that not even his friends will know about it. He told me. The thing is, he's going to kill me too. He'll have to, because I'm the only one who knows. I know he's going to because of the way he's been acting." She moved closer to him and started crying once more. "Would you hold me, please? I'm scared. I don't want to die." She shifted over, sitting on his lap, and burying her head on his shoulder. At that moment, it occurred to him that he would do anything for her. Anything. What happened next seemed as natural as though it was meant to be. As though completing a sort of ritual, they got in the back seat, undressed, and made love until it was dark out. Later, laying on top of him, she said, "He's coming here tonight, alone. There's a spot where he's going to dig a grave so that he can bury your body, so that no one will ever find it." He listened, feeling the pounding of her heart, wanting only to comfort her, protect her. "I stole something from him," she said. "It's in my purse." She reached over to the front seat and, after rummaging around, handed him something that was cold and very heavy. Laying back down on top of him, she said, "It's loaded. Here, you can check if you want." He did. It was an automatic. The clip was full. "We can get him when he comes. No one will ever know but you and me." So there it was. The threat of Bill Mason would be gone for good. Josie was now his. He felt a giddy sort of confidence and realized that taking Mason's life now would be like putting down a rabid dog. Nothing more. She checked her watch. He should be coming soon. They got dressed. He backed his car into the bush so that Mason wouldn't see it. Then he and Josie sat on the hood and waited. They didn't have to wait long. They heard the familiar rumble of Mason's truck long before they spotted his headlights approaching through the trees. He drove his truck right into the middle of the clearing and stopped, leaving it running, the lights on. He got out, leaving the door open, and went to the back of the truck. There was the unmistakable sound of a shovel being picked up, and Mason jumping to the ground. "Stay here," Gerald whispered. Josie nodded obediently. His confidence suddenly deserted him, but his resolve remained unshaken. He was so scared now that his hands shook. Clenching himself, he took the gun out of his pocket and moved into the clearing. Mason saw him and started in surprise. "What are you doing here, asshole?" Gerald took a deep breath and stepped fully into the light. "It's over, Mason," Gerald said in a voice which sounded surprisingly calm, and raised the gun so that Mason could see it. A look that was a mixture of dread, betrayal, and tired realization came over Mason's features, and he replied in a voice that was equally quiet. Calm. "Josie's here, isn't she?" Gerald found that he could smile. "Yup." Mason nodded, and sprang into motion so quickly that Gerald was caught entirely off guard. Mason nailed him with the shovel before he could even think about using the gun. He suddenly found himself sitting on the ground. The gun was gone, and Mason was standing over him, leveling another blow. He tried to throw himself out of the way and caught most of the blow on his shoulder. The pain that followed was instantaneous and unlike anything he'd ever known. Mason had nailed him with the edge of the shovel, and something in his right shoulder was broken. Perhaps he had been cut, right through into the bone. In desperation, he charged, then shifted at the last second, sliding to the ground and kicking upwards. Mason made an agonized grunt as Gerald's knee slammed into his crotch, and he went down to his knees, fighting to get up, to straighten up. Gerald wasted no time. Time itself seemed to turn to quicksand, things moving in slow motion, as he found the gun, picked it up, pointed it, and fired. Mason put up his hand reflexively. The bullet slammed into the middle of his palm, smashing bone, muscle, and tendon, and caught him in the chest. Somehow he lurched to his feet and charged forward. Gerald fired again. This time the bullet slammed into the point of Mason's chin, just to the left, shattering it. Blood spattered all over his torso. Chunks of white bone and teeth stuck out of his face. Part of his left ear had been blown out where the bullet had exited. Impossibly, like an incarnate nightmare, he lurched forward again. "Hit something vital," something told him. Gerald pointed at the center of Mason's chest and fired off every round. Like a disjointed puppet, Mason backed up, his arms jerking as though they had no volition of their own, until he was leaning against the side of his own truck. He slumped to the ground, slowly, leaving a smear of blood on the side of the truck. He fixed Gerald with a look that was almost pitying, tried to say something, and collapsed to one side, eyes fixed on eternity, blood coursing from his mouth. There was something about his look that was so disturbing that Gerald felt he had to figure it out. But Josie came running out of the bush and grabbed him by the arm. "Gerald, come on! We've got to get out of here!" He stood rooted where he was. Why had Mason looked at him like that? What was it he wanted to say? Josie began screaming at him. Come on, we've got to get out of here." Distracted from his reverie, he took stock of his surroundings. Right. Mason had been dealt with. Josie was his. That was all that mattered. He found that he was able to move, that he was even calm, detached. "It's all right," he said. "Just get in the car. It's over. It'll be a long time before anyone finds him." He became a different person after that. He was much stronger, more confident. Josie was his girlfriend. She was such a source of encouragement, always pushing him to assert himself, to stand up to everyone and everything. He found the change somehow disturbing, though. He was vaguely aware that he was becoming more like Mason, that the person he had been was gone. He shrugged mentally. So what? It was better to be an aggressor than a victim. It was almost a month before they found Mason's body. Gerald felt an eerie sort of confidence that they would not discover that he was the killer, and he was right. The police had decided, apparently, that Mason had been hanging around with the wrong type of characters, which he had been, and had paid the price. They closed the case today, Josie told him as they drove to the party house. Feeling elated and daring, they had started hanging out there, where Mason, with Josie, had spent a lot of time. The house was run by a gang of bikers who were drug dealers and car thieves. Gerald would often get really drunk and get into fights, which seemed to impress Josie no end. so he did it as much as possible. World's a better place without him, Gerald replied. Besides, I'm a better dealer than he ever was. Much better, she said with a giggle and kissed him. He had never had anything to do with drugs in his life, but after killing Mason, he found it almost natural to take all that had been his. Mason's suppliers were now his suppliers, Mason's customers were now his customers, and Josie, too, was part of the spoils of war. It was a primitive and deep-rooted feeling, and it made their lovemaking equally primal. Josie liked it rough. One rainy fall evening as they were driving home, Josie was being unusually quiet. "What?" he shouted to break her out of her reverie. She smiled almost wistfully. "Oh, nothing. Well, there is something. Could you maybe do something for me?" "Name it," he said. "Well, I've still got that gun. The one we used that night." "We used. Not you used." It had a comfortable sound, like an affirmation that she was his, always. "What about it?" "Gerald, we have to get rid of it. I wonder if maybe you can take it. I'd like you to bury it at that spot we go to by the lake in the summer. I'd like to come, but I have to be at home." He put out his hand. She took it out of her purse and gave it to him. He put it under the seat. "Done. Here's your house. I'll see you tomorrow." The next morning, she couldn't conceal her surprise at seeing him sitting in his car, waiting for her. He thought for a moment that she might run, but, looking afraid, she walked quickly to his car and got in. "I killed Scott last night," he told her. "I made sure the gun was loaded so I wouldn't end up like Mason. I figured it out." She nodded, looking at nothing. "I thought you might—" He sighed, clutching the steering wheel with both hands, remembering the look on Mason's face. "How many were there?" "Scott, Mason, Patty, her boyfriend, Neil. Did Mason kill Patty, or did you?" "We both killed Patty," she said in a flat voice. "Billy always felt guilty about it. He was going to tell—" He started the engine. "Get out!" She turned to him, her face suffused with suppressed weeping. "I did love you, you know." He didn't want to hear this. "Just shut up and go." She remained rooted where she was. Sighing, he started the car and began driving, aimlessly, both of them silent. Inexorably, his meandering took them eventually to the lake's edge. He stopped the car and they both got out. She began walking to the water's edge, her back to him. With a dead feeling in the pit of his stomach, it occurred to him then what she expected. That she was right. That it had to be done. The sound of the shot was very loud and echoed across the lake. Soon afterward, there was a second loud report. Then, except for the quiet lapping of water and the wind in the trees, all was still once more.